I never imagined that on March 15th, 2025, I'd find myself hovering between life and death, much less seated at the right hand of Donald Trump when a freight truck crushed my leg on Fifth Avenue. My name is Samuel Pierce, and for the past 4 years I've served as Mr. Trump's personal assistant, coordinating his daily briefings, organizing meetings in Mar-a-Lago, and carrying burdens most people never see. Born and raised in small-town Salisbury, North Carolina, I grew up in a devout Baptist family. Sunday mornings began at 7 a.m., hymnals in hand, suit pressed by my grandmother's careful fingers. Faith was the lens through which I viewed every deal, every handshake, every late-night strategy session in Trump Tower. That afternoon began like any other. A sprint across busy sidewalks, my phone buzzing with updates from lawyers in D.C. I'd just confirmed a last-minute press briefing when the screech of brakes jolted me into the street. One moment, sunlight warmed my cheek. The next, pain exploded as the truck's momentum slammed me against cold asphalt. For a heartbeat, I thought of my mother's final words. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Then darkness swallowed me. I awoke, or so I thought, in a corridor of churning shadows. My heart pounded with more fear than I'd ever felt stepping onto a political stage. Questions flooded my mind. Had I lived a life worthy of grace? What would become of the man I'd dedicated my days to serving? How would I reconcile the polished image I'd helped craft for Mr. Trump with the rawness of my own soul? In those first moments of unconsciousness, I clung to a simple prayer. Jesus, be my guide. Little did I know this plea would lead me far beyond the sterile walls of hospitals and boardrooms, into a realm that would challenge every conviction I'd ever held. When the darkness settled around me, it felt alive, thick as oil and colder than any winter wind I'd ever known. My senses screamed before my body moved. I could hear the drip of liquid somewhere ahead, the low moans of unseen creatures, and the distant crackle of flames. Each breath tasted like rust and ash. I tried to move my arms but found them bound by chains of shadow, cold tendrils that pulsed with a terrible intent. My thoughts raced. This could not be a dream. My last memory had been the sterile hush of the emergency room. Now I was trapped in a place that mocked life itself. I forced myself to look around. Walls of obsidian rock rose on either side, slick with a substance that seemed to writhe and shift when I blinked. The ceiling was lost in a haze of smoke and ember. Far above, I glimpsed an eerie red glow that pulsed in rhythm with a heartbeat not my own. My footing was uncertain. The ground beneath me buckled like a living thing, molten cracks snaking through black stone. With each step, waves of heat licked my ankles, as if the floor itself sought to pull me under. A guttural roar echoed ahead, shaking the earth beneath my feet. Shadows whipped through the air, taunting me with the faintest outlines of human shapes. I recognized familiar silhouettes, boys I had gone to church with as a child, the kindly face of my high school neighbor, even the stewardess who had helped me to my seat on a cross-country flight. They drifted just beyond reach, faces twisted in silent screams. I called out their names, but my voice vanished before it reached their lips. The realization hit me like a physical blow. These were not memories or visions. They were souls in torment, and I was intruding on their agony. Further on, I discovered a vast chasm opening into impenetrable darkness. Across its yawning mouth stood a figure larger than any man. Its skin looked like cracked obsidian, veins of liquid fire tracing across its limbs. Horns curled from its skull, and its eyes burned orange with a hunger that made my blood turn to ice. It spoke without moving its lips, a voice that rolled through my chest like thunder. You. I could not speak. It told me that I had trespassed, that the day of my reckoning had come. I felt my faith quiver beneath the weight of that word. In that moment, I understood that this place was no accident. It was a mirror to every fear I had buried, every doubt I had silenced in prayer. I stumbled backward, but the chains of shadow tightened around me. From the chasm's edge, hands reached out, skeletal fingers that clawed at my coat, my trousers, my very flesh. Each touch was a flash of every wrong I had ever done. The moments I had hushed a conscience to protect a reputation, the times I had bowed to power rather than stand by my beliefs. The memories sliced through me more sharply than any blade. Guilt and shame flooded my mind, drowning out my prayer. I screamed for light, for mercy, for someone to pull me back to the world I knew, but the cavern only answered with 1,000 echoes of my own despair. Yet even in that pit of horror, a small ember of resolve flared within me. I remembered my grandmother's hymns, her gentle insistence that faith was not a shield from suffering, but the lamp that guided us through it. The chains rattled at the sound of my defiance, but they did not break. Still, in that moment, I knew I was not alone. Somewhere beyond these walls, beyond this fire, a promise waited. One I had dared to believe when I whispered my plea moments before. With that fragile hope, I forced myself to stand and press forward, deeper into the dark, knowing that what lay ahead would demand every ounce of courage I had left as I stumbled forward, every breath a razor's edge as the ground melted beneath my feet. The chains of shadow dragged me onward, clinking with each desperate step, pulling me toward the heart of this hellish domain. Around me, the walls narrowed into jagged spires of black glass that reflected my distorted face, eyes wide with terror, mouth twisted in silent screams. Heat pressed in from all sides, a suffocating weight that made my lungs burn. Somewhere above, a thunderous roar pulsed like a heartbeat, urging me deeper into the abyss. Ahead, a circle of flickering torches revealed a grotesque amphitheater carved into molten rock. Dozens of figures writhed in agony, their bodies bent and broken by unseen torturers. I recognized one man's gait before I saw his face. Reverend Milton Hayes, whose Sunday sermons had filled my youth with hope. Now he was naked to the waist, suspended by chains that seared his skin with every twitch. His eyes flicked toward me, so full of sorrow that my own heart shattered. I yelled his name, but the chains choked my cry before it could escape. In his agony, I saw the consequences of hypocrisy. The pastor who had preached forgiveness yet judged so harshly, now trapped in a cycle of unending reckoning. Beside him, a young mother knelt in a pool of molten tears, rocking back and forth as a dark figure forced her hands into scalding water. Her baby's wails echoed through the cavern, an anguished sound that no lullaby could soothe. Panic threatened to consume me as skeletal hands emerged from the floor, clawing at my ankles, ripping at my coat. Each touch was a searing reminder of times I'd chosen ambition over compassion, moments I'd smoothed over my conscience to protect a reputation. Guilt stabbed through me, sharper than any blade. My knees buckled, and I fell face first into the heated stone, the smell of sulfur and regret filling my nostrils. I tried to rise, but a hulking figure seized me by the collar, its skin like cracked obsidian, eyes glowing with malice. It leaned close, and its breath scorched my cheek. "Confess," it rasped, its voice a grinding echo. "Admit your sins." My mind reeled. I had made mistakes, yes, but was I truly beyond redemption? Terror and shame warred within me until my jaw clenched with rage. "I confess," I gasped, "but I believe in grace." The creature recoiled, shrieking as if its essence recoiled from the word. In that instant, I glimpsed the spark of something else, something fierce in my own heart. Around me, the tortured souls paused, their cries faltering at the sound of that defiant confession. For a moment, the air stilled, and I felt a presence beyond this inferno, an echo of mercy. Before I could make sense of it, the chains snapped, and I tumbled backward into darkness. Flames roared back to life, but something within me had shifted. Beneath the weight of despair, a fragile strand of hope had taken root. As I lay battered on the scorched earth, I whispered a prayer not for deliverance, but for strength, to face whatever lay ahead, and to carry this vision back to the world of the living that I pressed forward into the cavern's deepest throat, every step a battle against the weight of despair that clung to me like wet cloth. At the center of this infernal arena lay a plateau of cracked obsidian, ringed with smoldering coals and punctuated by torches that sputtered in sulphurous wind. There, standing alone, was a figure I could scarcely believe, Donald Trump. His tailored suit was singed at the hems, his tie lustrous even in that blighted light. He stood with shoulders square, hands folded before him, as though awaiting judgment in the most public spotlight imaginable. His face was both familiar and alien. The tan I'd seen in press conferences here took on a ghastly sheen, as if his skin had absorbed the cavern's red glow. His eyes, once steely with ambition, now bore the hollow look of a man who has peered beyond all earthly facades and found only the stark core of consequence. For a moment neither of us spoke. The crackle of embers and the distant groans of damned souls were a harsh chorus to our silent standoff. Then he spoke, his voice carrying a tremor I would never expect from the man I'd served. "America needs the truth," he said, each word echoing like a gavel strike. I recognized the line from my thumbnail's promise, but hearing it here, in the pit of ultimate reckoning, rendered it almost sacred. He did not shout. He did not plead. His words were measured, heavy with regret and with a resolve that felt like both confession and command. I remember the shock that rippled through me. In life, I had witnessed his confidence sway crowds. Here, I felt that same magnetism tempered by vulnerability. I realized then that this was no apparition meant to torment me. It was the unguarded essence of a man stripped of all defenses. I felt compelled to step forward, though every instinct screamed danger. "Why are you here?" I found myself asking, voice rough as gravel. His gaze met mine, and I saw something like sorrow flash through those pale eyes. "I sought power," he admitted. "I built walls around my soul to keep out fear. But fear follows us all, even into the shadows." He paused, as if weighing the gravity of his own words. Then he continued, "This place reveals what we hide. I saw the faces of those I hurt. I heard the cries of broken promises. I came here to confront it, to understand that no office, no title, no deal can shield a man from judgment." As he spoke, the chains that bound me loosened, as though his honesty had rattled the very structure of that realm. The flares of lightning from unseen storms danced across the ceiling, illuminating the contours of his expression. I realized that my own confession in the descent had opened the door to this encounter. His admission had opened a crack in the prison we both occupied. The cavern seemed to breathe around us, the conflagration of flames ebbing to a dull glow. In that instant, I understood my purpose. I was not merely a witness. I was a messenger, a conduit for the message he bore back to the land of the living. I knelt before him, though no words came, for my knees felt rooted to the burning ground. He offered me a nod, quiet and solemn, then raised a hand as if offering a benediction. At that moment, I felt the hard shell of cynicism crack within me, replaced by a fierce determination to share what I had learned. Without another word, the plateau dissolved beneath my feet. Heat swirled, darkness claimed me, and I plunged away from that fiery summit. But his final words followed me like a mantra. "America needs the truth." As I fell, I clung to that phrase, and to the certainty that I would carry it back across the threshold of life, no matter how wounded or terrified I felt. When the world went black and I felt myself hurtling through a void of silence, a single point of light blossomed before me, gentle, unwavering, and impossibly warm. Its radiance cut through the smoke and ash like a blade, and I knew without doubt that it was not of this realm. The chains that had bound my limbs fell away of their own accord, clattering to the ground as if repelled by the purity of that glow. My heart, which had pounded with terror and shame, slowed to a steady, peaceful rhythm. I blinked against the brightness and found myself standing on a smooth, alabaster floor that stretched in every direction. The crackle of fire and the cries of the damned were gone, replaced by a hush that felt more alive than any noise. Before me stood a figure clothed in simple white, with eyes that held the weight of eternity and the tenderness of a parent. His outstretched hand beckoned me forward, and I took a cautious step, feeling a strange lightness in my chest. "Fear not," he said, voice like a river of mercy. Every syllable seemed to wash away the remnants of despair. "You have seen the depths, but now you shall behold the heights." I wanted to speak, to ask 1,000 questions, but my tongue felt too raw. Instead, I dropped to my knees, overwhelmed by a mixing of awe and relief I had never known. He knelt beside me, placing a hand on my shoulder. The touch was cool, yet it kindled a fire of hope within me. I felt memories of hymns long forgotten, my grandmother's voice drifting through sunlit church aisles, rise up in my soul. In that moment, I understood that this was the same Jesus whose sacrifice I had sung about since childhood, the one who had carried every sin and made a way through death itself. A vision unfolded behind him. Faces of those I had served and those I had judged, now bathed in light rather than fire. I realized then that mercy and justice were not enemies, but companions in his design. He whispered, "Go and speak what you have witnessed. Let my truth bring healing where my warning has fallen." I nodded, tears blurring the brilliance around me. As the vision gently faded, the light stayed with me, a tether guiding me back. With his words echoing in my heart, I felt the first stirrings of a purpose greater than any ambition I'd once known. In that sacred silence, I pledged to carry this illumination into the world of the living, so that America, and every soul I could reach, might learn that even in the darkest pit, light remains waiting to break through. When I opened my eyes, white fluorescent lights stabbed at my vision. My body felt heavy, as if I'd aged decades in a single breath. Monitors beeped rhythmically, but my mind roared with memories of those molten halls. I tried to sit up, but pain lanced through my leg where the truck had crushed me, and deeper than that, a hollow ache where my faith had been shaken. Nurses hurried in, voices muffled by the storm of images still burning behind my eyelids. The choking chains, the crack of obsidian horns, and Trump's weary confession echoing, "America needs the truth." As days passed, my physical wounds began to mend, but my spirit felt raw and unsteady. In the polished corridors of the hospital, I replayed every moment in hell. I found myself praying with a fierceness I'd never known. No longer the rote petitions for success or favor, but desperate cries for clarity and courage. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that alabaster floor and felt the warmth of the light. Yet waking life pulled me back into old rhythms. Phone calls coordinating Trump's schedule, whispered gossip among aides, the familiar rush of power corridors. It felt like walking on two shores of a split river. Nightmares became my midnight companion. I'd awaken screaming, gasping for breath as scalding chains rattled in my dreams. My hand would find the cross my grandmother wore on a chain, and I'd clutch it until dawn. During staff briefings, I'd catch myself zoning out, haunted by the echo of Christ's benediction. Let my truth bring healing. I realized my faith had once been a shield I lifted for show. Now it was broken open, demanding to be lived honestly beyond boardroom facades. Friends noticed my silence. Some whispered that near-death experiences often warp the mind. Others cheered that I'd seen the light. But I felt neither deranged nor smug. I was haunted by responsibility. In quiet moments, alone in my room or on a slow ambulance ride home, I wrestled with questions I'd never asked. Was I complicit in smoothing over deals that hurt people? Had I traded spiritual integrity for ambition? And now, armed with this intimate glimpse of divine mercy and torment, could I go back to the life I'd known? Each morning I journaled, raw, unedited pages spilling my doubts and longings. I prayed not for comfort, but for the courage to speak what I'd witnessed. My nightmares began to shift. The flames receded slightly when I whispered forgiveness. The chains loosened when I wrote the truth. Step by step, I felt a transformation stirring, a painful yet beautiful alchemy of grief, repentance, and hope. The world I returned to was unchanged, but I was not. In that inner struggle, I sensed the first real stirrings of a mission that would shape every choice from this moment on that I awoke with a single resolve. To be more than a messenger, I would become a catalyst for truth. No longer content to sit silently behind closed doors, I vowed to document every detail of that infernal vision. I began reaching out to theologians, survivors of near-death encounters, and investigative reporters. Anyone who could amplify the warning I'd been given. My new quest was clear: expose hidden realities, spark repentance, and guide America toward a deeper, unflinching faith that in the weeks since my return, life has been a tapestry of contrast. My leg has healed enough to walk without crutches, but each step still carries the echo of that molten abyss. I traded my tailored suits for simple slacks and linen shirts, choosing humility over pretense. Morning devotionals replaced the frantic rush to briefings. I spend more time in prayer than in boardrooms. Friends and colleagues whisper that I've changed, But I know the shift was never about them. It was about honoring the promise given on that alabaster floor. I've begun sharing my testimony in small gatherings, church halls, community centers, even online forums. Each time I recount the choking chains and Trump's tremulous confession, I feel a sacred tremor in the room. Hope kindled in the face of terror. Some listeners weep, others confront long-buried doubts. I don't sugarcoat the horrors I witnessed, but neither do I linger there. I point them toward the light, toward the mercy that shattered my chains and the call to bear truth with compassion. My role as a personal assistant is over. I resign quietly, offering no dramatic exit. Power and prestige lost their luster when weighed against the value of a single soul. Now I travel wherever I'm invited, to speak, to listen, to learn. I collaborate with near-death researchers, theologians, and storytellers, weaving my experience into a larger tapestry of divine encounters. In every conversation, I carry the refrain that ignited me in that cavern: America needs the truth. Peace has settled in my heart, not as the absence of fear, but as the presence of purpose. Each sunrise reminds me of the light that banished suffering. Each sunset echoes the flames I survived. I walk forward knowing that my journey began with an accident, and a near-death experience that unmasked the depths of despair and the heights of grace. This is my new beginning: to live transparently, to speak courageously, and to guide others toward the same unwavering hope that carried me home.